Please feel free to start.
Okay.
Start. Please change the slide.
First, I'll just brief welcome before we get to this. It's so good to see everybody here today. It's the first time we've met in person in 3 years, and some of us don't know each other at all. So thanks for that great tour. That'll be a good basis for further discussion. And hopefully we'll go around when the discussion starts. We'll go around and would love to hear from each of you about what you, why you joined the committee and what you're most interested in, and to see if we can forge a consensus about what's most important for this committee to do. So with that, I'll do this opening statement. The trustees of the Boston Public Library reaffirm our commitment to racial equity, and Matthew's covering the next word, so I can't really see it. Principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion more broadly. The library is formally committed to becoming an anti-racist organization in response to systemic racism, inequity, and injustice prevalent in our society. We acknowledge also that the Boston Public Library Central Library stands on land that was once a water-based ecosystem providing sustenance for the indigenous Massachusetts people, and is a place which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange among nations. We're committed to land acknowledgements for all locations in which we operate. We reaffirm this commitment to set the context for our planning, deliberations, and public engagement so that they take place from the spirit of welcome and respect found in our motto, free to all.
I can take a roll call.
So roll call?
Yep, that's all right.
Go ahead.
All right, Berman.
Yes, here.
Bradley.
Here.
Cooney.
Here.
Enriquez.
Yep.
James.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Enriquez. Oh, I said you already. I apologize. Johnson. Billy.
Here.
Leonard.
Here.
Prindle.
Here.
And I also just wanted to acknowledge that a few of our members were not able to join today due to conflicts. You have a quorum? We can move on to the minutes. Ben?
Yes, if everyone had a chance to read the minutes, we have to vote on that?
We do. We could do a general vote when we're in person, and I'll just ask Matthew separately.
Okay. So another roll call?
You need to take a motion to approve.
Oh, move to approve, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Matthew, would you approve the minutes?
Yeah, I do approve the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ben, I think you had wanted to just go around the room before we go into the formal.
Oh, we want to do that?
Did you want to, or do you want to hold that for discussion?
I'd rather hear the presentation
Okay,
first.
great.
It'll be more foundation for the discussion.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, great, and I'll try and keep it brisk so we have enough time to do it. Would you mind advancing the slide deck? So this is where we went on our tour, just to kind of orient you. So we started in the arts department, art storage with the prints and photos. We moved through the renovated spaces, including conservation lab and those stacks. We went down to digital services, and then we visited the Leventhal Map and Education Center. I just put this slide here to give a sense again of scope and scale. It's a very large physical space, and there are very large collections. And we're really excited to be able to share some of these spaces that previously we hadn't been able to. Next slide, please. So to give a sense of context of how the collections fit within the larger collecting scope of BPL, there's an asterisk. As all asterisks do, they provide caveats, meaning that we currently believe that we hold somewhere around 21 million items, but again, that is subject to a wide variety of types of media and a wide variety of types of counting, honestly. But to give you, I think what's really important here is to understand the various percentages of how collections fit. So the circulating collections, meaning collections you can take home with you, about 1.9 million items comprise only about 9% of our collections. But they're also, not surprisingly, the most heavily used, and they are available both at the Central Library and at our branch locations. We have our special collections, which occupy the spaces that you saw today. So all of the spaces that you visited are special collection storage spaces, although we do have special collections in other locations as well. The places that you saw were the major repositories. That comprises about 16% of our collections. Again, the sense of scale, rare books and manuscripts, about a little under 250,000 rare books, over 1,200 linear feet of boxed manuscripts within that space. Archives, we have over 500 named archival collections, maps and atlases totaling over 200,000 maps, architectural drawings, a vast collection, which is probably the least item level understood of our collections, prints and drawings, about 140,000, and then Aaron talked to you about the photographs, which total in the millions. And so those, again, a sense of scale, we are one of the 5 largest collections in the country, and one of only 2 members who are members of the Association of Research Libraries, public members, the other being New York Public. So again, we operate at a really interesting scale, both for our in-person circulating services, but also this vast research collection. Next slide, please.
Can I just stop you for 1 second? When you say archival collection, what does that mean?
So archives are really, they can be anything from a box to hundreds and hundreds of boxes, but they are records. They're records of people, they're records of organizations, they are records of institutions. And so we have everything from archives that are a person's personal papers, which are heavily collected, particularly in rare books and manuscripts. We have institutional archives like the Society of Arts and Crafts. We have business records for instance, the Charles Connick stained glass collection, but also we have the artwork, the gouaches and the stained glass itself. Architectural drawings we have business records. So again, we have filings, marketing records. It is one of the least known of our collections because we collected archives for 170 years without archivists on staff to actually administer the collections until.
So it's the archives of, say, an institution that was given to.
Exactly, or a person's personal papers who came to us.
And it's also the biggest explanation why there's some variability around the estimates in those numbers. What counts as an object when you're talking about an archival collection? Is it a sheaf? Is it a bound set of papers? Or is it the collection as a whole?
Right.
And at different points in time, different curators have used different counting mechanisms. So that's why we have some variability, and it's best to talk about, an estimated 21 million rather than actual 21 million. So it's not, when you see some things change, it's not that stuff has gone missing or been lost. It's rather that we've updated in most cases, updated our mechanism for the way we are counting to try and bring standards to bear on that.
Right, are we counting number of folders? Are we counting number of items in the folders? Are we counting number of boxes?
And Beth, you said one more question.
Of course.
We and New York are one of two of the only what?
We're the only 2 public members of the.
Association of Research Libraries, which is about 127.
Of which Matthew
Yes.
is the current head.
Okay.
And so, again, I think it's really important to position ourselves with that in mind, the lens of the public, but also the larger.
The other non-academic members, for the sake of argument, include the Library of Congress, the Smithsonian, the National Archives, the National Libraries of Medicine, and probably one other. So that's the company we keep in that sphere.
Okay, so
and many of the university members are also like land-grant universities that have a particular public dimension to their mission in a way that perhaps the Yales and Harvards of the world do not.
Right.
So just to give a very quick sense of these are the departments that report up through me. I recognize it's very small, so I'm just going to give you a sense of sort of how it's outlined by department. At far left is our preservation team, which includes the conservators in the lab that you visited earlier today, but also our offsite storage facility, COBAC, the City of Boston Archival Center, reports up through that arm. We have the arts team. You met Aaron today. That includes our curators of prints, photos, fine arts, music, and their various library assistants. Jay, you met today, who heads the rare books and manuscripts team. So that the group that reports up through him includes both library assistants, librarians, but then also our public services arm. You met Kathleen, who runs the reading room. Eve Niger is our lead archivist. Joe, you asked about archives. She joined us 2 years ago. That was the start of the first archives team at BPL. And we now have 3 archivists reporting to her, so that's a huge amount of work. And then off to the screen, Meg Weeks recently left BPL, but the interpretation and tours team, and then currently the research collections report up through me as well with Laura Armshurst's departure.
Sorry, just like the funding for all of this is a mixture of City of Boston funding for key positions, some associates funding for particular specialties within this group. There are trust funds that are used that are restricted for several of these areas. And then the MAP Center is its own unique 501c3 opportunity, but about half of the funding for that enterprise actually comes from the library and the fund combined. So there's a family that makes all of this work.
So this again is in, I think, what was distributed to you yesterday, so I'm not going to read it to you today, but it really is to explain sort of where, as we complete this calendar year, really our big work was around reopening special collections, and that has occupied our team for 5 years in terms of getting ready for that space. And it's not just physically returning the collections, but it really is how do we re-enter the world of public service? How do we do it in a 21st century way? We've already started to gather metrics around our reading room and email reference. All of that involves new technologies as well, which again allows us for true metrics. I think before we had sort of stories that were anecdotal, in some cases I think apocryphal, about how we're using things, who are using things. We have a lot of good data that has just started as of 3 months ago that I think is going to continue to help inform. Next slide, please, Jay. The other things that are really important to us right now, the Founding Research Collection, you briefly met Hepsi as we were walking through the arts workroom. We have a vast research collection, as I mentioned previously, that includes a ton of rare and valuable material that has been accrued over time. It wasn't collected that way, but through essentially the fact that we were a collecting institution locally for so many materials that don't exist elsewhere, because materials and scholarship changes over time, there are incredible holdings within our research collection that also need the same sort of care that we are providing to our special collections, right? Cleaning, cataloging, digitization, all the work that sort of happens to make that. We are kicked that off this year, again, with externally funded grant money to start the first 150,000 of those. The scale for us is big. Like if you think of any other library talking about 150,000 books, that represents their entire collection. For us, that's not even 20% of the Founding Research Collection, but it is an incredible pilot for us to be able to launch. You saw the Boston Herald Traveler photo morgue work that Erin is working on. The first 16,000 of those photos have been imaged. We're doing a collection storage study to try and figure out, with all of these physical things, how are we stewarding them over time? And then we've been scanning those card catalogs that you saw in those drawers so that people can access them. The other work, which I cannot overstate, is 12 positions were hired. So that was really, for us, it's a big, we have a lot of new people that started just this calendar year. So moving on. This again, we will talk more about this, but this is in your packet. What we are planning for next year and thinking about our priorities is how do we think about discovery of our collections? How do we help the researchers use our materials? How do we document what we're doing? Some of you asked about things like acquisitions. Juan, you asked about deaccessioning. We need to document those processes. And then I think as we talk within the group, this committee, how do we build engagement? And there are a lot of different ways that we can do that. Who are we trying to reach? How are we trying to reach them? What are ways that this group can help us think about what are partners we might want to form, what partnerships we might want to form, and how do we better promote? And so I think that will be, again, as we talk today and in future conversations, that really is going to help inform. David, we're going to make him, but do we want to instead do the?
I think we should do the find out what people are interested in.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean,
It's a live,
You want to do a quick?
I'll do it quick, and
Yeah,
then
do
we
it.
can leave the slides for you to review on your
Yeah,
own
let's
afterwards.
do
Does that work?
does everybody have a hard stop at 10, or what's the story?
Lily has a hard stop.
Pardon?
Lily.
And then-
Oh,
At 10 or, okay.
10?
Well, I'm supposed to be someplace.
yeah.
Okay. Well, you'll speak first.
I'm fudging a little bit.
Okay.
So just a brief McKim then, David?
So the McKim Building is part of Special Collections. I mean, think of it as, the built part of the holdings because of the artwork, because of the architecture. We've been on an arc of renovations by focusing on branches, the two parts of the Boylston Street building that we did in 2015 and 2016. The map center that you just saw was 2012. And the McKim building was largely restored, or at least 2/3, just 3/4 of it restored in 2009. In the 1990s and 2000s. Never touched the third floor. So what I hope we do next, as a big ask, a moonshot, if you will, is turn the unrenovated parts of the McKim building into a home for engagement with special and research collections. That's beyond the Map Center, which was pretty forward-thinking in 2012, did some work today, beyond the rare books and manuscripts department that you just saw. We have advertised that to the public as the place where you can engage with special collections today, but let's be honest, that was a renovation of rare books and manuscripts. It was not the entirety of the collection spaces. There will be three main bold concepts in the renovation. It is the McKim Plaza and facade to make it more accessible, welcoming, and inviting. Indeed, some people find this beautiful facade intimidating and not as welcoming, in fact. Secondly, the possibility of putting an enclosure over the courtyard to make it usable all year round, and also to allow circulation between the Johnson and McKim buildings happen without having to traverse through the Washington Room, Elliott Room, the other spaces that then become corridors and not usable as, say, classrooms or lecture halls and so forth. And then the third is the interior renovation of spaces that would really deliver on this concept of a home for engagement with special collections, more than a reading room, more than a place to meet with librarians, curators, and staff, more than an exhibition space. What is the 21st century version of that? That is the fundamental vision question that we need to answer.
And is there a target date for the entire renovation, when it would be complete?
Well, no, there is not. Because there also is no guaranteed funding yet, and the estimates in the Shepley-Bullfinch master planning exercise that completed last year already put us in the $300 million range, which actually is not out of, it's not out of bounds in terms of what's conceived. In an ideal world, we would have the city contribute, the state contribute, and private philanthropy contribute. We're kind of in a socialization phase right now. The chair is putting together a committee for trustees to begin to provide some oversight to that process. The mayor is very excited. But being excited and committing to specific numbers and specific funding years, we have some work to do there. The fund will lead a feasibility study to talk to the philanthropic community writ large, Boston, New England, and beyond. We need to do a little work in thinking about national, federal, beyond that. That might be a stretch, but this is on the historic register, this building. There are plenty of reasons to think the NEA or NEH communities may also be interested. So I think we've articulated where we want to go. We need to refine the vision, and then we need to socialize the funding requirements in a way that delivers this. But this is likely a 2 to 10 year arc of work over multiple phases.
Good, thanks, David. Well, before we get into the meat of our discussion, I'd just like to go quickly around the room and ask each person to just talk about what interests them most being on the committee and what they see as the larger purpose of the committee and how we can be most impactful. Lily, would you like to start? I know you have a time issue.
That's okay. We're fudge. But I'm delighted to be on the committee. I've always loved the library and came here as a kid and have continued to come all my life. What else did you have?
Well, just what,
what-
how do you think the committee can be most impactful,
Well-
our purpose?
I guess just to back up the staff. We've seen so many staff people here just today, this morning, and it's amazing. They all care, obviously. They all seem to
New technologies change learning, and I'm very interested in how libraries interact with the public. So I think the anticipating 3 to 5 years, which is the time it takes you to plan a exhibit, what might be coming down the road, especially in this
have been actively engaged ever since. I have a long-term interest in 16th, 15th century cartography and the history that goes with it, which led me to become engaged with the Map Center. I'm currently chairman of the board of the Leventhal Map and Education Center. So I guess given my academic background, passion for history and cartography and maps, the intersection of the Map Center with the BPL, looking at how we can collectively bring alive history and future maps, but integrating everything that goes with it is my particular interest. I also have a history in, I look at these old books, mountaineering. One of my former hobbies was high altitude mountaineering. And I love reading the original books of mountaineering because they bring alive what people thought about when they were doing it, not the revisionist history that we all write about retrospectively.
And what about the purpose of the committee? How do you think we can most make our mark?
To me, this is my first opportunity to be on the committee, and I really feel privileged to be part of that, because to me it's helping bring this unbelievable special collections that every time I see it, overwhelmed. But bringing that alive to the public to understand where we have come from, to better understand where we're going. So that I think the activities of this committee, to me, are about that, bringing together with the community, looking at collaborations outside, looking at partnering. How do we bring things together? How do we converge? It's what I've done in biotechnology. My role as an academic and as a board member and a founder has been, how do you converge things?
Yeah.
And I'd like to see that happen in real time on a broader scale here.
Thank you. Matthew, I think you were frozen there for a while. What
I am
what about
back,
your
yes.
thoughts on the purpose of the committee and how we can most be impactful?
I think a couple of different things. I mean, I think just looking at this, I got involved mostly because David asked me to get involved, and I was glad to help David and BPL as much as possible. I think there's tremendous potential here. I grew up in New York City, and so I'm very familiar with the New York Public Library, both from the branch perspective and from the research library perspective. And I see the opportunity where BPL can serve a very similar function as well as New York Public. And I think putting my Association of Research Libraries presidency hat on, I think BPL sort of manifesting that potential is good for all of our members, and it's good for the country at large. In terms of what we can do specifically to help the library, I think that we can and should be an advocate for the library, an advocate for its collections, and provide some feedback both to David and Beth about they're in the process of actually running a library system. And certainly I know, being in a similar seat, that I like to depend on groups like this to help me work through things that I may not see while I'm in the weeds.
Okay. Elliot, your thoughts?
Yes, thrilled to be here with all of you. Priscilla was kind enough to invite me, and we know each other through the International Women's Forum, and I've been able to meet David and Beth, so love that. I've always been in the arts. I've been delighted to work with Lily as part of the Art of the Americas chair of John Moores Cabot Chair, where we created the wing and innovated within it. Prior to that, I spent 10 years at the Met working on, we thought, about 650,000 works on paper, books, prints, manuscripts, including baseball cards, of which I installed the first ever installation and exhibition of those in 1993 there. So I love libraries. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm right now at Harvard finishing up a year working on art and wellness and how we can engage more with that, as well as I'm very interested and love hearing the threads of arts-based research, which is still not well understood, but how that can be wedded to scientific research, which nowadays seem to sit in two different categories. So I do think there are opportunities to do that with the committee, with the great works you have here. You've got such breadth, the sky's the limit. So look forward to working with all of you.
Okay. Beth and David, I think we'll circle back to you during the discussion. Joe, how about you?
Sure. So I'm thrilled to be part of this committee. I sit on two boards. I'm a trustee of the library. I also sit on the board of the Associates of the Boston Public Library, which, as everyone knows, is an independent 501c3 whose mission is to support but we actually have a mission statement, but I can't remember it. But it's essentially to support the work of the Special Collections Department and the Boston Public Library to enhance the cultural life of Boston. I'm very interested in how the library as a whole can work with the associates and with the Special Collections Department, not only to preserve and conserve what we have, but to bring it public through exhibitions and engagement with schools and various other ways that we can highlight what's in the special collections. You know, the city doesn't know what we have here. The residents of the Boston metro area doesn't know the breadth and specialness and uniqueness of our collection. And I think we need to advertise that, shout it from the rooftops. And I'm very interested in us trying to do that because I think it enhances the mission of the library as a whole.
Good. So do you want to weigh in now or later in the discussion about your thoughts overall?
Collaboration and the wow factor of this library is what I'm interested in. I get so excited walking through the stacks, seeing our collection, and I know that other people would be equally enthusiastic and excited if they could see these objects as well.
Right. Well, building on that and some of the previous comments, I'm also, I like that wow factor phrase. We do have so many jewels in our collection, and there was one very helpful thing that I think Pamela sent out to you a couple of months ago. There was a wonderful feature in the Globe that highlighted some of the historic collections that we have. But I think we have to also face the reality that very few people know about it, these treasures. And I see it as part of our mission to raise awareness and to show off our wares. And I think there's sort of a tension in missions between wanting to do exhibitions and show off our wares and to best preserve what we already have. Shorthand for that would be back of the house work, which we got a great sense in the tour how important that was. All the work that goes on behind closed doors, if you will, in terms of cataloging, barcoding, the digitization. And I think some people in our discussions internally with Beth and David, there's an argument for concentrating on that back of the house work, and that perhaps exhibitions are too labor intensive and we don't get as much bang for the buck by doing those. But that's something which I would like to discuss now. That tension, whether it has to be intention or whether we can do both, and even defining what an exhibition is. One, I was a little surprised to hear the 5-year thing. Your estimate of what it would take to mount an exhibition, that struck me as a long time. And I wonder if we could take also smaller bites at the apple and do smaller things that wouldn't be so labor intensive. Matthew, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, sure. I'll weigh in based upon my knowledge. I don't know the specifics of what David and Beth are facing, so I certainly defer to them about sort of local conditions that they're facing and any timeline that they would put forward. Generally speaking, though, I think that, and I find that I've got the tension here at Notre Dame is, you know, when you've got sort of outstanding collections like BPL has, people want to see them. And certainly one of the challenges that I face, and I think I can speak also for David, is, you know, coming out of something like COVID where things basically stopped. All the back of the house stuff that you witnessed this morning had basically stopped. And I think I heard Beth say that there were 12 hires. When I hear that you've hired 12 people, that's a lot of hiring. And that amount of hiring and the sort of associated level of onboarding and acculturation, that does take a lot of time. it also suggests to me that there was a period of time in which there was no hiring actually going on. And some of that's probably because of COVID. So I do think that your question, Ben, about, what are the smaller bites at the apple available to us is an appropriate one, because we still want to be in a position where we whet the public's appetite for what treasures Boston Public Library has. And so I think it is, as is most things in life, some level of balancing act. And I think we want to show progress in terms of getting stuff seen by the public. But I do know from firsthand experience that some of the things that have happened over the last few years and all the things that are going on, that back of the house stuff really has stopped, and the engines on that are literally just coming back into play now. I'm facing that exact same situation here at the University of Notre Dame. So I am empathetic to that piece of it as well.
So if I can jump in, I think I heard a phrase, and maybe it was Juan or Charlie or maybe even Lily, that said public engagement is really what you're interested in, the focus of our work together being on as we think about the mission of this Special Collections Committee. I mean, I love the configuration of the background of this group now. I actually wasn't sure where Priscilla was going at one point early on as we were picking people and so on. But look, we've got science and technology, we've got biotech, we've got the publishing space, we've got the art space, we've got Boston writ large, we've got people who've been long-term supporters of this area within the library. I don't think the question is, should we do an exhibition, yes or no? I think that's the wrong place to start. Yes, we want to do exhibitions. The Map Center, we just heard, has one opening next week or later this week. And then in January, we have the first exhibition on display in the lobby of Special Collections. So it's not that we're not doing them. I think the larger ones, like the Civil War, the Revolutionary War, the Shakespeare Unauthorized, the John Adams ones that we did, and they're in that chart that you will have seen, those are 3 to 5 year propositions and require a space, which we don't really have. They require funding, which we don't really have. And they require staff, which we don't really have for exhibitions. So doing a giant one like that is an uphill struggle. So rather than start there, I would rather start with what and how is the way to activate public engagement in a way that makes sense. And what does an arc over the next 6 months, the next 3 years mean? Because I think if this committee decides it wants to be in the weeds of what happens over the next 3 months, that is not your role. That is the role of staff. The committee's role is, as an extension of the trustees, is to set policy, set strategy, bring fabulous ideas and partners to the table, absolutely, but do not get in the weeds of whether an exhibition should or should not happen.
I just wanted to support Matt and the staff because I think it's a strategic choice of what you're going to be doing for public engagement, of which the exhibitions will be part. And just to confirm what Juan said, yes, it's often many more than 5 years. 5 years is a pretty standard rule of thumb, but not, it could be much longer depending on scheduling. But I was thinking for this committee, one thing to think about could be collection sharing partnerships, whether in the Commonwealth, New England, however defined. Nationally, I think there's a really interesting program that has been happening at the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston, who took advantage of it. That's where I learned about it, but it was where collectors were offering works of art as gifts to all museums around, and those who felt that the work would be a good fit were willing, could offer that. And given how large you are, I'm assuming with the New York Public, if you're among the 2-3 largest in the nation, there are probably many places that do have wonderful exhibition spaces that could handle, you could offload to them a sort of collection sharing partnership. But again, it takes time to think about that, strategize about that. How does that fit? And then I think, to your point, Ben, everybody wants to see things happening. I understand that. We've all been in institutions that want to see things happen on a rapid timeline. I think there it's really great if you can prioritize whom do you want to engage with? Children, the older groups that are, have been not generally part of the community. Do you want to reach out to new communities? So that would all be part of how you're going to tailor your exhibitions to those communities. You can't tackle necessarily everything, but you can say, all right, in the next 5 years, we're going to do work that will address younger people, the future generations, communities that haven't been here. Whatever it is, you're going to do that as a staff. We can help you, but what I mean is you're all going to do that.
And Boston has this arc of 8 years of historical commemorations, starting with 23 and then 26, and then all the way to 2030, which is the 400th anniversary of the city of Boston. So there's some built-in timeline things that we want to, but we should consider tying something to. And is there a way to do these in a way that is more inclusive than it's ever been done before, and maybe tells a story that maybe it's in partnership with the Museum of Science. We are having dialogue with the MFA and with the Boston Symphony about some interesting things. This is a public meeting, so I can't go into details because it would spot some of the partners are.
Because what?
Because it would spot the partner around what we're talking about.
Until it's one.
Yeah, I think there's an important dimension to the conversation, and that is scaling. How do you scale? So when you talk about an exhibition, or you talk about a collaboration, or you talk about something that comes from the special collections, how do you make it available more broadly? And the tools, exhibitions are one way of scaling. The branches are another way of scaling. Education.
Yes.
And learning how to take what has been developed as part of the exhibition, build that into a curriculum, teach the teachers, and then let it permeate through the system. And of course, scaling IT-wise is critical to what we do. So I think not only getting excited about what the collaboration might be, particularly I think coming up, David, with the this 8-year arc, but scaling, how do we get the impact? And that'll be the engagement.
Well, the lack of space pending the McKim renovation, I think, pretty much forces us into a partnership mode and thinking of what we do in collaboration with others. The MFA has been mentioned, didn't know about the BSO possibility, but that's the kind of thing that I think we would have to pursue, and probably if we ended up with an exhibition, it would be on their turf, right?
First time out, yeah. I mean, like the Toulouse-Lautrec one, which was brilliant, I think. I think I can say that, right?
Yeah, it's terrific.
Because we were the largest contributor to that exhibition in terms of materials, but it was primarily at the MFA.
Yeah.
We had 4 pieces of our own collection that were on display and rotation here, so there was a tease to tie together. And there were lectures in all of the branches around the materials that were on display and why was this important. And the Boston Public Library card gained you entrance to that exhibition at the MFA.
And building on Joe's point.
Juan, did you want to jump in?
Just, before, I think we should be ambitious and think about something like Treasures of the New York Public Library, and think of an exhibit on that scale on a 5-year, whatever.
Yep.
I think there's probably also Treasures of Boston coinciding with some of those things on a 5-year scale, but I think there's some early wins that you might want to push of having a Treasure of the Month, and just in your entrance, having something that every month changes, and saying maybe 3 or 5 things, and maybe to your point of using the satellites, if you could have, the insurance is going to be a nightmare. It's going to be but if you could have secure cabinets in your satellite locations and make it Treasures of the Month, it's a quick early win for people to want to come back and say, okay, what is it this month? And they can be, last thing I'll say, one of the really popular books at the Peabody is that book on the rarest of the rare, and it's the only examples of that particular biological rock sample in the world that are in that building. You probably have books that are unique in the world, and it would be very cool to put out a book of the rarest of the rare, right? On, probably a 3-year cycle. Things you can only find here, things you can only see here. And mix the popular with the rarest of the rare in those month-to-month cabinets in your entrance.
Right, Matthew, you got a point?
Yeah, the one of the things that just hit me is, and this sort of, I guess, is in the realm of public engagement. We're talking a lot about the collections, and I think appropriately so. There are some pretty compelling narratives around BPL staff, the craftsmanship that they exhibit and the expertise that they bring to making these treasures accessible and available, that I always think is very, very compelling. We talk about back of the house too often as if it's not exciting. And I think there are some very compelling narratives about what Beth and her people do in order to preserve and in order to conserve, in order to make these things accessible, that I think is just very fascinating. I don't think people realize the level of expertise that they're bringing every day. And I think to the extent that in terms of public engagement, if there are ways to bring narratives and tell stories about the people who do all this work, I think that also would be very compelling.
Good idea, good point. I love your idea about highlighting to post a win, so to speak, to think of interesting objects on a rotating basis that could be displayed, assuming we could figure out the insurance and security issues.
Oh, and I wouldn't rule out replicas in some cases as part of a solution. It's not the same thing, but it's like, oh my God, they have that. I want to go see the real thing. That's a tie-in too.
Yeah,
Let's not
Probably.
Sorry, no, go ahead, Priscilla.
Go ahead, Joe.
I was going to say one thing very quickly, which is you can also, digitally, right? I mean, a lot of people can't walk into the McKim building, right? But they can go on the website. And so maybe thinking of a way with our, website to sort of focus and highlight these as items that we have. So just
For
throwing out
promotion.
there. For promotion,
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
And awareness.
an awareness, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I just was going to say, we have a radio show that's produced right
Here.
in our lobby.
Yeah.
Yes.
I never could figure out why we couldn't make some better relationship with
Yeah, we'll
them.
put Beth on there to talk. Yeah,
Yeah, they're here
Yeah.
twice
twice a week, yeah.
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 And
Yeah, so there's the consensus that I'm hearing is doubling down on the public engagement part of this as what we all want to do. Yes, exhibitions are part of it, for sure, both the little shorter term ones, but also the longer term ones, but they're not the only way to activate public engagement. So I think our work as a group is to put some meat on the bones of what that skeleton is in a way that allows Beth and I and Jay and others to have plans that can execute that. Not sure how to frame that as our work, but I think that is the work that we should do together.
And I think we should continue to discuss it, and we need to wrap up, and I know that people have stayed a little longer. But the key piece here is, for me, again, is awareness. And we really wanted you to get a sense of what is available, and to begin to think about how, the first thing is, who do you personally share that with? Who do you collaborate with? What are the relationships that you have with different organizations that might be interested in the treasures that are here? So I think that this is an ongoing conversation.
Yeah.
Is there anything else?
Yeah, just one
in
other
terms of the
piece
handouts?
that Joe and I had talked about briefly, is that the associates have put on performances in the past.
Thank you, Juan.
Thank you, Juan. And there would be opportunities for us to collaborate going forward on doing that as a different form of exhibition, perhaps.
Yeah, well, through a generous gift, the Associates puts on a Pierce Performance Series, which is a show, some type of a performance once a year. We just had a wonderful one-man show about the life of Thomas Paine, which was put on right here in the Rev Hall. 2 performances, it was wonderful. And so it would be great to be able to collaborate with the library. I think the library and the Associates could talk about ways to collaborate on things.
Definitely.
And of course, we have some wonderful, materials in the special collections. I think do we have John Adams's copy? Whose copy of Common Sense do we have?
Adams's.
We have John Adams's copy of Common Sense. So, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Which we need more of.
Okay, so I guess we should wrap up. And let's see, Pamela, new business now? Okay, new business. One thing that we, Priscilla's suggestion that I think would be a nice thing. When is our next scheduled meetings? February, is it? Do you know?
Yes, I don't know the date off.
Yeah, but before our next meeting, if you have an opportunity, the BPL has many events and interesting digital archives. So before our next meeting, if you had a chance to attend a BPL event and explore one of our many interesting digital archives, Beth will be sending out in the next week or so a calendar of events and what is it, the top 10 list of archives?
Right, so just some links to explore with just some information about things that are either newly digitized or highly used, and then just some upcoming events. But obviously, we have a very full calendar of types of things that could be open.
So that would be good.
It's February 22nd.
Okay, so I think.
I would use the library too.
Yeah.
My book back.
Yeah.
Good.
And
I
then
don't think I don't think David is issuing fines anymore.
And then on Friday, David, at noon, will you describe what you're doing, State of the Library?
Oh, sure, on Thursday, actually.
Thursday?
I think it's Thursday. So I actually have 3 events this week. Tomorrow night, I'm interviewing Neil Gabler, the author who has this major tome out on the part 2 of the life of Edward Kennedy and looking at the roots of conservatism and liberalism in his words, which is fascinating. Thursday at noon, sponsored by the Boston Public Library Fund, doing a state of the library update, really with a lens towards the philanthropic community. I'm doing something on Friday as well, but I don't remember what it is.
So on Thursday, if you're at the library or on Zoom, and then it will also be recorded.
I
Yeah.
don't remember Friday.
Pardon?
I do remember Friday, but
Yeah.
something else.
Great.
Okay, so could I get a motion to adjourn?
There is no public comment.
No.
Okay.
All right, can we adjourn?
Move
Yes.
to adjourn.
All right, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Great meeting.
Thank you, folks.
Especially.
Thank you all for this wonderful tour and meeting.
The tour was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was
Your work was
fantastic.
incredible.
I'm so glad.
Yes.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Matthew.
Bye.
Thanks, Matthew.